There are no shortage of tough decisions for the Miami Dolphins to make this offseason. We're looking at what may be some of the toughest here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. You're on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Today on the show, have started laying the groundwork for the 2025 Miami Dolphins offseason blueprint, which if you're not familiar with or if you just started watching the program this past season, every February, beginning of March, right before the league calendar year starts, we take a full week and we lay out like my plan, my comprehensive plan from free agency and restructures and draft and salary cap perspective, what the Dolphins should do in the offseason, in my mind, to put the team in best position moving forward for the upcoming season. It's a mock offseason, really, but it's a full offseason. It's not just a mock draft or anything like that. And it's kind of the thing I look forward to most on the show, because the other show I do, Locked On NFL Scouting, is fully dedicated to team building across the league. And that show operates with an understanding of salary cap and contracts and comp picks and draft assessments and scheme fits and the whole nine, right? And we do that here on Locked On Dolphins with the offseason blueprint. And next week on the show, we're going to go through my grades that I had for the team and in each position room, the players and who performed above, below, and to expectation, what you paid those players, because that's going to be a big piece of the puzzle for getting into where was your money well spent, where was it not? And for where it was not, can you justify spending it there again? But this kind of sets the table, this show, with what I think some of the toughest decisions are that are going to await the Miami Dolphins this offseason as it pertains to the contracts of Bradley Chubb and Terron Armstead and Tyreek Hill with his ongoing situation and Tua Tagovailoa and his contract. There's a lot of strategic decisions this team has to make with big name players on the team. And I'll tell you right now, my expectation is out of the names that we mentioned, I would expect at least two of those players will not be with the team next year. Now, who they are, that's where you get into all the different forks in the road and the choose your own adventure based off of the decisions that you have to make. And I think this thing starts, we'll look on the offensive side of the ball, and we'll start with 10, right? Drew Rosenhaus was just on Pat McAfee at lunchtime and said on one hand, he thinks 10 is committed to the Dolphins after positive conversations with the team leadership. And then Darius Butler said, great, so Tyreek wants to be a Dolphin. And Drew said, whoa, hold on. I don't want to speak for Tyreek. I don't know that. We need to have that conversation, right? And when Chris Brewer speaks to the media and is asked, did Tyreek request a trade for you? And his response is no, but he didn't ask me for, or did he backtrack on asking for a trade? And Chris says no, but he didn't ask me for a trade either. There's just enough smoke here where I think this is going to be something that lingers, hopefully quietly, if it's going to benefit the Dolphins to them to get something meaningful as a part of this decision. I think this is going to linger on the back burner for a while. And I think it'd be wise for all parties to let it linger on the back burner until we get closer to league calendar year. And hopefully there's some kind of agreement that can be made if indeed that's what 10 wants. And I think the Dolphins would be smart to pursue this, whether 10 wants it or not, just based off of how this season went for him. But the decision is not just whether or not to keep him on the roster for the upcoming year as a player that is obviously still very capable of making a very large impact on any given game. He's still a high-end talent. Nobody's questioning his toughness to play through the wrist injury that he did, or the impact that he brings, or his skill level as it pertains to being an impact player. He is that. But if you're going to make a move to trade Tyreek Hill, there are going to be a lot of fans that are just going to look at the salary cap number and the potential cap savings with a post-June 1st trade, and they're going to say that's what we should do. And I personally vehemently disagree with that. So the way that it's structured for Tyreek Hill is he does have a bonus that's due this year, and he has a $10 million base salary. The bonus that he has due is it's a $15.85 million bonus, but it is scheduled to be paid on August 31st. Why that's relevant for the team is if you wait until after August 31st, you could trade Tyreek Hill, and an acquiring team would only have to pay him $10 million. But you'd be on the other end of the hook for having paid more than half of his salary before moving him. So you theoretically have, before he's due any cash, August 31st. Normally those bonuses are due in March. So the Dolphins did give themselves some more wiggle room here. There's no hard and fast deadline when the league calendar year starts in the middle of March, like there are for many of these other situations. But I think there is a deadline here for Miami in if you're going to move off of a player like this, with this magnitude of talent and this ability to impact the game, I would want to do it before the draft because I would want assets to help my team this year. And I know Stephon Diggs was traded from Buffalo to Houston, and they took a future two to trade Diggs. And I think that's in the ballpark of the conversation for compensation that I think is reasonable to expect for Tyreek, who's going to be a 31-year-old wide receiver this year, and that's the same age that Stephon Diggs was when he was dealt. But if I'm Miami and I can take a it's going to end up being $598,000 more in dead cap, which is all of the money that he's already been paid that's been prorated out that you haven't accounted for against the cap yet. It's $600,000 more than what his current cap number is that you already have in bookkeeping and accounting scheduled for this year upcoming. So it's about break even. I would rather break even on the salary cap this year and take the dead cap number and free up $52 million in cap space in 2026. Not pay a $15 million option bonus for Tyreek on August 31st and get draft capital back that I can then turn around and apply to my football team in the here and now. That to me is more valuable than trading for a pick 9 months from now that maybe is around better to split the dead cap between two seasons and then not save the $52 million in 2026. Right? You'd be kicking $15 million of that 28 that you have to take in dead cap into 2026. Now, you'd still be saving $37 million, but you don't get any cap savings until you execute that trade, and you'd have to wait to execute that trade until after June 1st. So you'd be carrying the $28 million cap hit until June 2nd at the earliest anyway. So it doesn't really help you in the immediate window in which you have to add talent to your roster. So from my perspective, that is why I would rather take all of the past money accounting that you have prorated out, accelerate it to just accept that this is a lump figure for him that you're already accounted for against the cap. Just carry it with you, and then you free up. And now all of a sudden, the $52 million, that's a lot of cap space. And 37's not a small amount either, but because you can't access anything else earlier than that anyway, doesn't really do you any good. So I would just continue, since I have to budget through June 1st for $27.6 million for Tyreek Hill, no matter what I do. I'd rather just do the trade execution, still account for that amount of space, and then get assets to help my team, and then free up $52 million. That's where I'm at with it. Now, we have lots more to get to. We got Tua Tagovailoa and how to handle his contract with the way that they structured that one. Terron Armstead and what his decision is going to look like. Bradley Chubb. Lots more of these big decisions for this team and how to handle them. That's coming your way next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. There's nothing better than going to the game, and whether that's sports, concerts, comedy, theater, live events is, it's the whole point of events is to experience it. The experience of your favorite sports and concerts and comedy is what really makes it an authentic and memorable experience. And if you're looking to have a memorable experience, you can get your tickets through Game Time using the Game Time app with Game Time Picks. You can find amazing deals and see the seat the view from your seat before you hit purchase and buy your tickets. You can toggle in all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees when you put the tickets into your cart. And with just a few taps, you can get tickets to all of those events delivered directly to your phone. Plus, the app's very easy, intuitive. You can scan the whole arena for seats and sections, and make sure you compare accordingly to make sure that whatever your budget is, you have an opportunity to find something that fits for you as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Let's talk Tua Tagovailoa. And the way that they structured Tua's next year of his contract, right? Operating under the assumption based off the tonality of the press conference that Tua got the slap on the wrist and the reminder that you have to take care of yourself. And the team is going to progress forward with Tua Tagovailoa as the starter in 2025. I think this team needs to do its due diligence to explore all avenues and adding an asset to the room to protect themselves in the event that you miss time with the starting quarterback once again. But as it's currently scheduled, Tua is owed a $25 million option bonus, and that is due for him on, that doesn't say when it's due. He's due a $25 million option bonus, which is a check that's written for $25 million. And then that against the salary cap is automatically spread out $5 million per year, this year, next year, then the year after that. That takes you all the way to 2029. You're spreading out $25 million in a check. But he's guaranteed $50.046 million, which means the other $25.046 million is currently scheduled to be a base salary for Tua. Now, why that's relevant is you could take approximately $24 million of that if you wanted to, and you could convert it into another bonus, and you could reduce his salary cap hit by, what's the actual total that it would go down? If you were to do a restructure, you'd save $19.3 million against the cap. His cap hit would go down from 39 to 15 and a half. So you'd save $19.3 million, almost $20 million in cap space that you can create if you were to max restructure Tua Tagovailoa's contract and not just do the 50-50 split. And teams like Philadelphia, that what they did with Jalen Hurts' contract is they automatically took all of the cash that he's owed and they automatically prorated all of it. This gives you a little bit more of a strategic buffer to selectively choose how much you want to restructure. Now, they didn't want a crazy high cap hit, so they did half of his cash owed regardless. But I would assume, they're probably going to manipulate more of this money and create another lump sum check and spread even more of it out to help reduce that $39 million cap hit, which again can get as low as $15.5 million if you were to do the max restructure. How much do you do? I have some thoughts on that one, but I want to come back to the how much you use there as it pertains to the Tua Tagovailoa contract. As far as Terron Armstead, there are some modest cap savings to be found if you choose to move on from Terron Armstead outright. And the team has the option to do that pre-June 1st and save a little over $4 million in cap space. Is Terron going to choose to play? Is Terron going to choose to retire? And if Terron chooses to retire, what the team could then do is they could restructure his salary that he's currently scheduled to make in 2025, which is $13.3 million. And he could restructure that down to the absolute minimum. So it'd be about $12 million less than what it currently is. And that would give the Dolphins $12 million in salary cap savings immediately. And then once you would get past June 1st, then you would process Terron Armstead's retirement and you would free up the additional $1.2 million of his base salary would come off the books. And you could post June 1st the retirement, which counts just like a post June 1st cut. But because he's owed salary, if you restructured the salary down, it's how teams kind of circumvent having to just process the retirement and then having money accelerate, like dead money accelerate into the here and now, because there is no post June 1st retirement, right? You have to carry this player on the roster until June 1st. But it works like a post-June cut. And then once you process it, whatever that year's current amount of prorated dollars, which is $7.8 million for Terron, you would carry as dead cap versus the $22.8 million cap hit that he currently has. So you're talking about $15 million in savings. And then you would take the remaining, about $10 million in money that he's already been paid out that's been prorated from 24 and 25 or from 24 and 23. And you would carry that in 2026. So Terron Armstead currently scheduled for $22 million cap hits in both 25 and 26, which are the last 2 years of his deal. But if he chooses to retire, you could restructure it down and save the $15 million right off the jump and carry the $7.8 million cap hit. And then the other $10 million would go into 2026. But that's still saving $12 million versus what you're currently scheduled for. But that's dependent on Terron Armstead choosing to retire. If he doesn't choose to retire, then you have to, do you play ball with him the way that you played ball with him last year and choose to restructure his salary to take a pay cut to stay here in Miami and continue to play? He played more snaps than he played in either of the last 2 seasons in Miami. He played in 15 games and played well when he played and was healthy. Do you just trust Patrick Paul and create the extra hole on the roster and move on if he still wants to play? Like that, there's some hard decisions there. And is that one where you just accept the full brunt of the money that's been prorated out against the cap at $18.5 million and take that all in one shot? Or do you carry his cap hit through June 1st and then carry that one as a split? And it would be the same amount of dead cap that we just talked about in the scenario that he retires. That's one for Miami where, with Tua finding alternative viable options, which I think that's going to be challenging for Miami with where they're positioned this offseason. So you operate in the assumption they're going to continue staying the course with Tua. He's going to get the slap on the wrist for making smart decisions, and they're going to selectively choose to strategize how to free up that space. Tyreek Hill kind of probably forced your hand, if we're being honest, with how he handled the end of the season. And they're going to put on a brave face and go through the next 10 weeks and would not be surprised if we get into the league calendar year and he suddenly there's an agreement for a deal to send him somewhere else. But Terron is the one where like he's got a decision to make and then the Dolphins have a decision to make. And they have somebody on the roster as a young player who's been groomed to take that spot. That gets a little more muddy. Now I want to get into Bradley Chubb and his contract as well. We'll get into that after the break, but then the timing of all of this, and then ultimately what the waterfall effect is of these things and what you choose to do and who you choose to keep and who you choose to not keep. The strategy is going to be really interesting because I don't think you can do all of these things. It wouldn't be super viable to do all of these things. So we're going to get into that next. Make sure you guys stick with us. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets. Win or lose, the FanDuel app gives you everything you need, from live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Right now, one that I really like for the wild card weekend is I like the Rams at home as a potential upset bid over the Minnesota Vikings. The Rams are 1.5-point underdogs at home. That one kind of speaking to me a little bit. I like it. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Bradley Chubb. The team chose not to bring Bradley Chubb back because $10 million of his salary is injury guaranteed. That is obviously not on the hook. He was healthy enough to practice. He had no setbacks. If they wanted to move on from Bradley Chubb, there's no stipulations of we have to write you a lump sum check now. And that was what was at risk if they brought Bradley Chubb back. But he's owed, from a cash perspective, what is it? It's a little over $20 million when you include the roster bonus as far as like per game, how much you're active for. There's a $100,000 workout bonus, and then it's $19.45 million in salary. You could move on from Bradley Chubb outright pre-June 1st and save $2 million from the $29 million cap hit that he currently carries. You could wait until after June 1st. And I don't think with him, he has 3 years remaining of player control for about $59 million in cash. Actually, it's a little more than that. About 18 and a half plus a 40. Yeah, it's about 60, maybe 62. $62 million in cash over the next 3 seasons, 25, 26, and 27. And for a player that missed all of last year, I don't know how robust a market would be there, so I would not hold my breath on that being a potential tradable asset for you as the Dolphins. But as we said, there's a 29 and change million dollar cap hit that you could save $2 million of and eat $27 million to move on from him pre-June 1st. Or you could go post-June 1st, carry the $29 million through June 2nd, and then have a $9 million dead cap hit in 2025. The other 20 and change in dead cap would be carried through then to 2026. So you'd save $20 million this year and have to account for that next year against the cap, but then you'd still save $9 million against the cap versus what he's currently scheduled for in 2026. Gotta love all the cap talk, right? But this is where I have a hard time with all of it because you could move on from Bradley Chubb and you could trade Tyreek Hill and you could have Terron Armstead retire. But if you have all of those things happen, what that ends up happening is you'd have $10 million in dead cap hit for Bradley Chubb. You would have for Tyreek Hill $28.3 million in dead cap hit to trade Tyreek Hill pre-June 1st. And if Terron Armstead retires, you would treat that as a post-June 1st cut. That'd be about $8 million. So you're talking between those 3 guys combined. That's 28. It's 40 or 37. It's about 45 million. You're already carrying about $17 million in dead cap because of the Xavier Howard contract. That's 15 because you post-June 1st cut Xavier Howard last year. I mean, you're talking $60 million in dead cap for Howard, Chubb, Hill, Armstead. And you're obviously getting into the dreaded R word, rebuild, with that much dead cap, right? Although it is worth noting, there are a number of teams that made the playoffs this year that had significant, and in the stratosphere of where we're talking about dead cap, the Denver Broncos made the playoffs, went 10-7 with $89 million in dead cap this year. The Buffalo Bills, because of, in large part, the Stephon Diggs contract, had $75 million in dead cap this year. The Vikings had $69.8 million in dead cap hit and went 14-3. The Packers had $64.5 million in dead cap and went 11-6. The Eagles had $63.5 million in dead cap and they went 14-3. The Bucks had $62.5 million and they went 10-7. It's like more than half the top 10 in dead cap hit, all above $60 million in dead cap. And those teams made the playoffs. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys the Dolphins are going to go 14-3 next year. But I'm also not going to say that dead cap is an unfortunate reality. And it's a part of the cost of doing business, right? But I'd be surprised to see the team choose to carry all of that and create more holes on the roster when the entire objective of retaining this brain trust that runs this football team is to be better than you were this year. And there's, from a talent perspective, if Terron Armstead leaves, you're not going to be as talented at left tackle. Even with Patrick Paul, you're just not going to be as talented. Terron Armstead is one of the best tackles in the game. If you move on from Tyreek Hill, you're not going to be as talented with your second wide receiver option, with Jalen Waddle being the holdover from this year to next year. You're just not going to be as talented. And in some cases, you can get into the conversation of does the chemistry that's involved with a change and being more balanced, is that better for you? And I have my own thoughts and philosophies there, and you guys can have your own, and I'm not going to tell you how to think and feel. At least that's not really the point of today's show. But I would be surprised to see all of that happen. Which brings me back to Bradley Chubb. Because Bradley Chubb was a good player for this team in 2023. He's a player that can unequivocally play at a high level. They did make the decision to protect him from coming back, to protect their interests. You've entered into the maturity level of this contract where at any point you do have an exit opportunity to get out of this contract and still save significant money, even if it is extended for another year. So what happens if you restructure Bradley Chubb? It goes from a $29 million cap hit to a $15 million cap hit, and then you still have your exit ramp as a post-June 1st cut starting in 2026. I might rather do that, have Jalen Phillips on the fifth-year option with the understanding I'm going to keep one of the two or none of the two, depending on how the year goes in 2025. I still have Chop Robinson with his maturity. I'd probably go out and get a vet to replace Emmanuel Ogbo with somebody that has some pass rush ceiling. And then you have Mohamed Kamara. You've got Grayson Murphy, who kind of popped in training camp as a rookie. You have Quentin Bell, who took snaps as an early down snap taker. I think can be a snap taker for this team. And then maybe you don't have to be so urgent about continuing to address the edge group. And I didn't think I'd find myself in those shoes as recently as just a couple weeks ago. It was just the assumption of, they're not going to address Bradley Chubb, so we're going to take the exit ramp here. But Bradley Chubb on a $15 million cap hit, being a year fully removed and presumably having the opportunity to get healthy, with what the school of thought is for the team, we could talk till we're blue in the face about what this team needs to do from our perspective. But understanding the people who are in the chairs and making decisions and the messaging that they're getting and the objectives that they have, I don't think they're going to have the liberty to just tear the whole thing apart. And maybe they should. They won't. So it doesn't really matter. So I think part of this is understanding the psyche of where the team is at in their life cycle. They're kind of a team in transition a little bit. Not from a decision maker standpoint right now, but the roster is a roster in transition. Which brings me to the Tua Tagovailoa dollars, the 25 and change $1 million base salary that he has. I don't think I would touch it to start. And I wouldn't touch it to start. Not touching it to start has nothing to do with exit ramps off the contract or getting out of it as soon as possible or mitigating cap it. Here's where my frame of mind is at. I know because I've already done the work. I have this table set up already. I can restructure obvious names on this roster for this upcoming season. And this is with the team at 49 out of a top 51 cap. So you add, 2 minimum salaries to this, which are going to be a little less than $1 million a piece. I can get the team to about $30 million in operating cap for March, the opening of the league calendar year, by restructuring Aaron Brewer, Austin Jackson, Zach Sealer, Alec Ingold, Jordan Brooks, Bradley Chubb. I can get the $30 million in operating cap without touching Tua's dollars, without making a decision on Tyreek Hill, and without making a decision on Terron Armstead. Now, if Terron chooses to retire, you can add another $12 million to that. Now you're at $42 million in operating cap. And I'd probably leave the Tua dollars alone until I get to a point where I've been aggressive enough and I've added enough talent where I need my operating cap to get me through the season with practice squad budget and free agent signings in season to account for injuries and all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't just empty the chamber on the restructure potential of that contract. I'd strategically wait, and it would be the last domino that I would have tip. Because I'm much more comfortable with saying Alec Ingold's going to be here this year, and I can cut $2 million off the savings. And this is even before you get into, you can cut Raheem Mostert and save $3 million. This is before you get into, you can cut Durham Smythe and save $2.5 million. So that's $5.5 million for two players that I don't think should be on the roster next year. You can add that to the $30 million in operating cap that you're at as well. And remember that I don't think the team ever got above 20 in operating cap last year because they were so tight up against it. And I remember that being the case because we kept sitting here saying they don't even have enough salary cap space to hit Christian Wilkins with the franchise tag, let alone add a bunch of other players. So that's where I stand. And if it were me, I'd let Terron Armstead make his decision. I'm operating in the assumption he's not going to be back. It's just a question of what does that domino effect look like? Is that a June 1st cut, post-June 1st cut? Is that a retirement where you get the access to the dollars earlier and then process it as a post-June 1st thing to split it between 25 and 26? I'm operating the assumption that Tyreek Hill is not going to be here. I'm actually kind of more cool than I thought I would be with keeping Bradley Chubb on and doing the restructure there and knowing that you could then in turn get out of that contract in 2026 as a post-June 1st cut and save about the same amount of money because of the inflation of the cap and because it'd be another year going by. They're going to have more wiggle room, I think. And that's before you touch the big contracts that are the hard decisions. But the order of events is somewhat player dependent. And I think if they're smart, the last thing they do is they touch the $25 million slush fund, effectively, is what they have in salary cap space at their disposal with the quarterback contract. So that's some of the hard, big decisions this team has to make from a cap perspective. We're going to get more into them. We're going to get more into the position rooms themselves, set all those tables for you here later this week, later next week on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you come back and see us again soon.